So basically, in my mind, 2 years from now, the wallet war is going to be as dramatic and as epic as the layer one wars. In crypto, basically, there's two things that will matter in 2 years. The wars between the layer ones and the wars between the wallets. These two layers happen to be the ones that will capture the most value 2 to 5 years from now. Basically, the single most consumer-facing layer and the most programmable, the most general, the most low-level layer. So it's sort of at the two extremes of the same spectrum, the most high level and the most low level. And everyone in between will get squeezed by these two layers.
Welcome to Good Game, a podcast for crypto insiders with your host, Imran and Qiao. Welcome to Good Game episode 8. A lot to discuss today. We're going to be discussing wallets, a bit of the history of the wallets, our experiences, and what we think the future wallets are going to be. There has been a lot of talk about the super wallet thesis, and we've seen some early incarnations of the super app thesis pretty early on in crypto. So we'll touch on what went wrong and what went right. Before we dive deeper, Qiao, any thoughts about wallets that you'd like to touch on?
Well, I think the number one question I want to answer and discuss today is, why do wallets matter?
Yeah.
What do you think? Why is this such an important topic?
It's the gateway for crypto. It's a great way to using crypto apps. Like for me, when I first started interacting with crypto, I needed to use my hardware wallet or some paper wallet, or even like a private key that I would have written somewhere, and then I would need it every time I would interact with crypto. And if we want to think about getting 1 billion users or X amount of users into crypto, we have to fundamentally understand where we are in the landscape. What can founders work on to improve the ecosystem and bring a 10x, a UI UX experience so that we can get more and more people using crypto apps today?
Yeah, I think that you're spot on. I think the user experience is by far, the user experience on the wallet level is by far the number one obstacle to mass adoption of crypto, and it's still an largely unsolved problem. And in my mind, over the last 12 years, 13 years since the beginning of Bitcoin, the thing that really drove the average users into crypto is the fact that there has been a lot of money to be made. That was the main driver. But in the ideal world, this should not be the driver. The driver should be a very user-friendly way to onboard into crypto rather than the money. And so that's why wallets are so important. And that's why we want to spend a whole episode discussing wallets.
And what's interesting is, the amount of time that's spent using a wallet versus the asymmetric bet in terms of how much money could be made, right? In the early days, you were rewarded to going through different hoops and steps to learn how to develop or use a wallet that you may never have used before. And now, as crypto gets easier and easier to get onboarded, it makes it easier for people that want to use the apps itself to use it and find other ways to extract value, like DeFi or NFTs and etc.
So in other words,
the curve,
in other words, you're rewarded for taking on the operational risk in the early days. One of the reasons why the early adopters of crypto made so much money is because they took on the operational risk of using super hard to use wallets, and the operational risk ultimately was compensated by the reward. So why don't you and I talk about our own history of using various crypto wallets and how that evolved over time, and how our experiences, user experience as users, evolved over time.
Yeah, I think you probably have a history that surpasses mine, which is Mt. Gox. So why don't you talk a bit about Mt. Gox, and then we'll go from there.
I mean, so my first wallet, for better or worse, was Mt. Gox, the centralized exchanges that went down in 2014. So back then, what happened was, I learned about Bitcoin, learned about Mt. Gox, and I was worried about the fact that Mt. Gox was based in Japan, at least for their custody, for their banking. Like in order to start trading on Mt. Gox, you have to wire money into this Japanese bank, and so that was a huge operational risk. And I said to myself, if ever Bitcoin was going to become $1 trillion asset class, this is a worthwhile operational risk to take. And so I did. So I wired some money into this bank based in Japan and bought some Bitcoin. And immediately after, I wanted to get a safer way to store my Bitcoin. And so I learned about self-custodial wallets. And the first self-custodial wallet that I used, I forgot the name, but the way it works is you open a website and then you use your mouse to generate randomness. Like you move your mouse around to generate randomness. And using that randomness, you can generate a public-private key pair. And then immediately you have to write down your private key on a piece of paper. And by the way, you do all, in order to be 100% safe, you do all of these things without connecting to the internet, right? So you write down your private key, and then you can store the public key in your computer or whatever in order to receive Bitcoin in the future. But that was like, it took me like 5 hours or something to learn about this process, learn about the security assumptions, and ultimately operationalize this whole process. And so I transferred my Bitcoin, most of my Bitcoin, from Mt. Gox into this, what I call, or what it was used to be called, paper wallets. And so this was my first two wallets, from Mt. Gox to paper wallet. 2016, Ethereum launched their mainnet. I started using the Mist wallet, which was probably one of the first, if not the first ever Ethereum wallet, to store my Ethereum and to interact, to send Bitcoin, to send Ether around. But 2019, 2020 was when I switched from Mist to Metamask, even though Metamask had been around for a while. But the impetus for me to switch from an existing wallet into Metamask was the ease to access decentralized exchanges or decentralized applications, especially in 2020 DeFi summer. Before that, all I've ever done with crypto was storing it in a hardware wallet or paper wallet, cold storage. But Ethereum and the decentralized applications was the first ever reason why I had to interact with something on-chain in a more complex way and to use a more sophisticated wallet. And basically my setup was using MetaMask as the front end, the browser extension as the front end, and a hardware wallet in the back end. And this has been my setup ever since then. I virtually never, ever use a hot wallet within the MetaMask browser. So using MetaMask without hardware wallet, unless it's for testing a new application with a small amount of money. And by doing that, I avoided a bunch of hacks over the years, and avoided a NFT rug pull, many NFT phishing attacks, and obviously the FTX collapsed recently. So that was my experience over the years. And if I look back, I basically slightly traded security for convenience by going from paper wallets into hardware wallet with MetaMask, but only slightly. And so I think that will have some implications down the road in the coming years in terms of the kind of wallets that we're going to see in the coming years when it comes to the trade-offs between security and convenience.
Got it. My experience was very similar. I did see Mt. Gox, but I didn't want to wire money to Japan, so I ended up using Coinbase because there was a time where they overlapped. Coinbase worked great for a very long time. Then MetaMask came out. Oh, so it was Coinbase. Then I remember Ethereum launched, and my Ether wallet was another way for people to manage your own private keys. Essentially, they would automatically generate a public key and a private key, and you would have to write down that public and private key. There would be this printout that you would be forced to print out, and then you would have to keep that in a very safe place.
Yeah.
And so I had pages of printouts of all my wallets in a folder that would be saved somewhere. And then I would, whenever I need to open one of those wallets, I would use a private key, log in, and see my assets. And then MetaMask launched soon after. And so I migrated all my private keys to MetaMask and started operating this hot wallet. Simultaneously, I ordered a ledger and then kept all my assets between the two. Between the three, a Coinbase, hot, and hardware wallet. I do remember Ethereum Mist as well. And so there were some really cool things that came out of Ethereum Mist, which I think is still relevant today for our topic. which was that one of the lead engineers his name was Alex. And what he wanted to do was build a super app for Ethereum. You probably remember this. You log in and you see a catalog. And in this catalog, you could deploy different types of smart contracts. So if I wanted to create an escrow account, a family trust, launch my own token, I could have done all of that within this web app, all with the click of a button. You get Ethereum smart contracts that would automatically deploy. I name the person A, person B, and it would automatically deploy it, which I still think is really cool. Like if you ask me today, how do I want to create a family inheritance trust or a plan, I have to talk to like 2 lawyers. I have to go through the whole process. Still very annoying. So having something that's seamlessly done within a web app sounds it still sounds very exciting to me today. And so we started to see like different instances of this like super app or wallet thesis that's been playing out throughout the iteration of different wallets over time. So you have Ethereum Mist, that was the original super wallet app that had a catalog of apps that you can leverage. Did you know that EIP 20 was started from Ethereum Mist? It was because of Ethereum. Yeah. Because I don't know if you remember, I just said like, how do you launch your own, launching your own token? At that time, they wanted to create this seamless and universal way of creating your own token that would be seamless against any app that's out there. And so Fabian, one of the lead engineers, submitted a proposal called EIP 20 that enabled a standardization of tokens within Ethereum. And then once that was approved, anyone can launch a token, and it really started the wave of the 2017.
That led to the 2017 ICO.
Yeah. But that was all from the Ethereum Mist wallet. And all the implications of the launch from that.
So not only do wallets solve this problem of user experience, but they actually over the years led to many important protocol level changes, or very low level innovations in the stack.
To build a super wallet, or be the canonical web browser, there needs to be a lot of things that needs to be updated, or a lot of like developer friendly tools weren't enabled at the time. There was a lot of infrastructure issues at the time. An example of this is like EIP 55 was launched from this team as well. And back then, if you remember, I remember this very, very strongly, which is whenever I would want to scan a QR code to send assets between my wallets, a dialog box would pop up that says, double check the wallet address, make sure that the formatting is correct.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're sending to a wallet that may not be able to receive the money. And that was a very simple fix. It was an EIP 55 that would automatically run a checksum and detect any errors and then alert the user or fix it automatically. Now we take it for granted, but back then it was very hard to do that. The other thing that came out of the Metamask Mist team was Web3.js that allows anyone to create, query, and directly connect blockchain nodes through a web app like experience, which is heavily used today.
And more recently, account abstraction, which was also motivated by wallet experiences. But we're going to talk about it as well.
Yep. So we started seeing instances of this throughout our history. MetaMask was probably the most revolutionary, in my opinion. I remember listening to a podcast by the founder. It was his first podcast that he did. And what he talked about a few things. One was he was working on the MetaMask idea before he joined Consensus, because back then it was all command line. And his goal was, how do I get more people using Ethereum today? That was like his main goal. And command line obviously isn't the right way to do it. So he was thinking about creating some DApp.
By the way, the other way I remember using my Ether wallet was my Ether wallet curates a number of applications that you can access from my Ether wallet website. But the problem with that is you have to rely on their curation. You cannot just access any decentralized applications. And two, I'm not sure if we could use hardware wallet in conjunction with my Ether wallet to access these decentralized applications. But in other case, MetaMask as a browser extension was really groundbreaking in terms of like the personal impact for my own personal experience, user experience. That was like 2020 for like without MetaMask, DeFi Summer would not have happened. basically.
Without Ethereum Mist, without MetaMask, we wouldn't be where we are today.
That's right.
Did you know that MetaMask wanted to do a browser in browser first?
What does that mean? Like internet browser.
Right.
Okay.
So they wanted to launch a browser within a browser. That was their first foray into MetaMask. But they quickly decided that isn't going to work, and it should be some sort of extension that sits on top of Chrome.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the route they went. They saw like there's just different ways you could interact with Ethereum at the time. Well, there was one other way that they were thinking about, which is like delegating your private key to dApp. But at that time, dApps could be very malicious, and delegating your private key to a dApp could result in obviously loss of funds. I'm highlighting this because they just launched something new that goes back to his original thesis, which is called MetaMask Snap, which we'll talk a bit about. But really, MetaMask was the way I think most people onboarded to crypto, and I still think onboard to crypto today. What do you think is good about this experience, but what do you think is wrong about this experience?
The browser extension experience.
Yeah.
There's a couple of very strong friction points. One is that as a new user, you have to search for MetaMask in Google's like extension store of browser extensions. You have to search for it, and then you have to install it. So that alone requires probably at least 30 seconds of your time. After you've installed it, if you're a new user, chances are you've never used a hardware wallet. And so you're going to go through MetaMask's process for generating the seed phrase. And you're probably going to be asked for writing down your seed phrase. And if you're a new user to Web3, you're like, what the hell is this thing? Like, I've never been exposed to this kind of user experience. Like the experience that I am familiar with is signing up with an email address and input a password, right? And so writing down this seed phrase requires a lot of mental bandwidth in terms of understanding the process, the security assumptions, but also actually writing down the seed phrase itself, which is like 12 words or 24 words. And that will incur another huge cost in terms of time, like probably an additional 30 minutes or hours, right? If you want to fully understand the process. And so this alone just creates a huge friction in terms of onboarding. And we're not even talking about accessing the dApps yet. So I think 90% of average users won't be able to get onboarded into crypto this way.
Yeah. I agree with that thesis. And it seems like there are a proliferation of many extensions now. I mean, like if you look at my Chrome browser, there's probably like 6 extensions that I can see today and another 3 that are hidden. And I don't think this is how UI UX should be working. And I don't think this is how 1 billion people are going to come into crypto today.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of that, the other major problem with this is, well, right now at least, I have one browser extension for every chain that I use. So like I would use Phantom for Solana, MetaMask for EVM, what's it called? Kepler for Cosmos. And then like I have 6 different browser extensions to access 6 different chains, when in the ideal world, you can just access everything from one chain. And there's multiple different ways to do this. And we can talk about that in a bit as well.
Remind me to talk about Brave, because Brave is doing something very interesting. So MetaMask has been, I think the leader in the space, and it's pretty, I think for most crypto natives and people that are pretty savvy with tech will be able to quickly adopt to like MetaMask or like a Coinbase extension wallet. There's a couple cool things that MetaMask is starting to do now, which I think is relevant for our conversation. One is they launched something called MetaMask Flask. And MetaMask Flask is the canary version of MetaMask for developers. And so they're going to release new features that allows developers to play around with it to see how they can best use it for their dApp. One specific feature or product that I want to touch on is called MetaMask Snap. And you could think of MetaMask Snap as the ability to run a program in an isolated environment that will help customize the wallet experience. And so what does that mean in practicality? Well, what you could do in this case is you could think of this as their version of open sourcing the MetaMask wallet. So if I want to enable ZK features, I could enable it directly within the web app. If I want notifications, if I want messaging, if I want support of a new layer 1 like Contos or something like that, I can directly do that with MetaMask through the MetaMask Snap feature. So I feel like their strategy here is getting deeper with developers and making this as a Lego block so that it gets integrated into the developers' mindsets and it becomes just like the de facto MetaMask, like the de facto UI UX experience for users.
So it sounds like basically developers can build custom features into the browser extension. I've seen the demo of it recently where the user, upon signing transactions, they can see whether or not the transaction is a scam. They can see whether or not some money is going
huge.
out. Yeah, this is huge for onboarding retail. Like basically, they can see if assets going out, if assets are going out that are receiving an equivalent amount of another assets coming in. Right. So for example, when you buy NFTs, you're going to spend some ETH and you want to make sure that you're actually getting NFTs in return rather than getting scammed. And so that feature is developed by a third party team, not by MetaMask itself.
Yeah, that feature. Yeah. So what's interesting is like over the years at Alliance, I've seen so many extension strategies, and I'm very bearish extension downloads to use a product, as you know.
Yeah.
But this enables distribution through this extension app, through MetaMask extension, right?
Yep.
So with that, so for any crypto startup that really is relying on this extension strategy, distribute through MetaMask.
Yeah. I mean, to make it more concrete, like that problem that I just described of scam detection, right? A different way to do this is you install two different browser extensions. One is MetaMask, and the other one is an extension that detects scams. But imagine that as a user, it's unusable.
Oh my God.
Like onboarding, in terms of onboarding, you have to install two different browser extensions instead of one. And so that will incur a lot more time. And two, every time you sign a transaction, you get one pop-up from the scam detection extension and another pop-up from MetaMask. Imagine the amount of pain that goes through that, right? And so I think this strategy by MetaMask is brilliant. Is brilliant. And I mean, if they successfully execute on this strategy, it's just really hard for other browser extension based wallets to disrupt MetaMask.
I think Bill Gates said this once. He said the goal for a developer platform is that there's more value outside of the actual platform itself that is deriving value from the actual platform itself, right?
Yeah, that was the whole thesis behind Windows, and that's the whole thesis behind App Store, Apple, and Google.
And MetaMask is doing this for their own Chrome extension. So
yeah, and what that reminds me of is Backpack X NFT.
Yes,
which is in my mind the sort of the Solana answer to this thesis. Do you want to talk about
more? Definitely, we'll want to talk about it. But I want to talk about one more topic before we get there. So going back to just MetaMask and closing it out. Before MetaMask Snap, I wasn't as bullish on MetaMask as I am now, because
me
now
just as a user myself, oh my God, like basically after EIP 1559, like 50% of my transactions somehow fail through MetaMask. It just like every time I sign a transaction, I get a failed transaction 50% of the time. It's unusable. It's really painful.
So MetaMask, I think, and we'll talk more about MetaMask's strategy against all the other wallet strategies shortly. I want to highlight someone else's, and I think this is the sleeping giant that no one knows about, that everyone knows about but never considers as competitors. Brave Wallet. Brave Wallet. I mean, I've listened to Brendan, who's the founder of Brave, most recent, a couple of his podcasts over the past couple weeks. And he sees the space really well. Like he sees the wallet wars. He knows the wallet wars.
For those who don't know, Brendan is the creator of JavaScript. So of course, he understands the whole browser history really, really well.
Really well. And so maybe I could talk about a few things that he highlighted. First was, he obviously started JavaScript. He enabled JavaScript. He directly worked with our Mark Andreessen in Netscape to enable JavaScript on Netscape, which I thought was pretty cool. He left to start Firefox, and Firefox at the time was like the biggest competitor to, I think it was Internet Explorer.
Internet Explorer, yeah.
Yeah. And they signed a deal with Google to allow direct search for Google, gave Google more power. And they ended up releasing their Chrome browser. So he left to start Brave. And Brave was the antithesis of all browsers. No ads, right? And everything stays private. And
there's ads, but you get paid for...
You get paid for it.
Yeah.
Sorry. I meant to say you're not being... there's no ad network.
Yeah.
The network is a private... they have like this machine algorithm that runs locally on your device that will take the data that you provide and has a catalog of ads that would distribute from. So they have this private catalog network where it'll distribute ads to your browser specifically. And then you get paid for that, for viewing those ads. But what's really cool about these guys, and I'll talk about all of this, their long-term strategies later, but he mentions it very early on. Brave is a super wallet. It's a super app. There's like 3 podcasts where he said Brave is a super app, which I thought was very like interesting wording.
I mean, what that reminds me of is the Chromebook, the Google desktop or the Google laptop, where the only thing that you have is a browser.
Yeah,
and so through the browser, your the thesis at least is that you're able to access all the apps from the internet.
Yeah,
and so. Same story with Brave. Like you access all the apps, but you also have a built-in wallet that you can do financial transactions rather than just information transactions.
So I re-downloaded the Brave browser. So I did that yesterday, downloaded it, created a wallet through Brave, and it automatically created a wallet for every chain it supports. So I have one for Solana, Ethereum, Dogecoin, like you name it. Everything is all tied to my user identity on my Brave wallet. And it took, a minute. And if you think about what you just mentioned earlier, like I have 6 or 7 different extensions for 6 and 7 different chains on a Chrome browser that has a completely different like go-to-market strategy. The user UI UX experience is going to be very fragmented across all the chains, across Chrome strategy, across Google, etc. But now if you have everything under one umbrella, the user experience could be 10x better. And I thought that was really cool. I mean, they have 20 million monthly active users that's using the browser today. All of them have wallets that are enabled. And once you have this like control over the user because you're using them as the de facto browser, you could do a lot of cool things as well. And I think it could become the biggest threat to MetaMask.
I mean, based on the numbers alone, like last time you mentioned MetaMask has what, 14 million?
30 million now.
30.
Okay. 30.
I mean, it's only 3x. So, I mean, the difference is really small between MetaMask and Brave.
Yeah.
But the other interesting thing to say about Brave is that going back to our whole thesis about the super wallet or the super app thesis of wallets, right? The reason why we're really bullish on wallets as a consumer-facing application is that they have a lot of power against everything that's on top of it, which is the apps. So if you think about the whole stack, right? You have the apps sitting at the top, and then wallets. Right, the wallets have so much bargaining power against the apps. We mentioned this many times in the past. MetaMask basically built in Uniswap or 1inch for what it's worth into the browser extension itself, and made a shit ton of money ever since, just by charging transactions. But if you think about the stack, apps, wallets, what is below wallets? It's browsers.
Yep.
Right. So browsers have even more bargaining power, and they have more bargaining power against wallets and apps, right? Because wallets can basically say, okay, you're building a browser extension, but I'm not going to let you survive. I'm not going to let you make life easier for your users. And so the browser is at an even lower level and has greater bargaining power. And then at the lowest level is the operating system. It's basically think about the App Store, right?
Mm-hmm.
App Store basically making, or Apple's App Store making NFT trading very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So the App Store has even more bargaining power against the wallets, against basically everything above it, right? So Brave sits very close to the bottom of the stack, and relatively speaking, has a lot of power against the wallets and the apps.
And you could argue that if everything becomes like progressive web apps as the world wants, versus just like actual apps in the mobile app store, browsers could have more and more power over these app stores over time as well. That's the idea that he fundamentally went along with, which is like, I want to get away from the Apple or compete against Apple and Chrome in a different way, in a way that gives the power back to the users, allows them to have their own data, self-custody, and the whole 9 yards. That was like the end vision that he talked about. He also talked about a few other things that he wants this super app to become. One is messaging. He wants to enable messaging between Brave users.
Mm-hmm. That's really obvious. That
very obvious.
Yeah, this should have happened a long time ago. Like when you buy an NFT, how do you contact the seller? Right, you want to contact the seller and learn about a bunch of things. And currently, there's no easy way to do that.
Yeah. So messaging, there's social. He wants to aggregate all the social experiences of social media.
That's also very
into
obvious.
Into its own web app. And then over time, decentralize his search algorithms. So those are like the things he wants to do in the future. But this is like what the Brave wallet could become, which is the de facto search, the de facto like window to the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of see Metamask strategy, and then we see Braves.
Mm-hmm.
We'll touch on some others. You mentioned Backpack.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give a quick primer on Backpack, and maybe we can dive deeper into what Backpack can enable, which I think is very relevant to this like unique strategies of what each company's doing. Backpack you could consider as like an open source wallet, and they have something called the XNFT standard, which creates like standardization between different apps. Essentially, if you open this Backpack app and you click on one of the links, it's like a React Native app that will automatically self-execute and deploy. And once you do that, you're able to use the app. The Backpack itself, the wallet, will manage your private keys on behalf of the user. So from a UI UX experience, you mentioned this earlier in our conversation, is that even with the extension, no one's going to download an extension to use an app, right? They want this experience to be so easy. It's as easy as downloading an app from the App Store and clicking a button and opening the app. That's our competition, if you ask me. It's not like competing with each other within crypto. It's about how do we make this UI UX experience 10x better than the Web 2 conglomerates today. And so Backpack strategy is similar to that, which is we're going to build a wallet that is going to manage the private keys on your behalf. We're going to become this open source wallet that allows apps to use us as distribution. And our goal is distribution and private key management and creating uniformity across all the apps that are out there, across all the layer 1s and layer 2s. And that's their goal. So you have Metamask, which is becoming more ingrained with developers, right? Through Flask and Snap. You have Brave, that's focusing purely on the web browser and search experiences that automatically enables wallets. And then you have Backpack that is creating uniformity across all apps and makes it easier to deploy any app and then gain distribution and private key management.
I mean, it seems like all three are going down the super app path, just in slightly different ways.
Yeah, they are. And they all have different DNAs to do that, right? So an example is for MetaMask, their DNA is more on the developer side, right? It's like, how do we enable cool Lego blocks that could enable cool features or products that could leverage MetaMask's DNA? Brave is anti-establishment. So it's about how do we get no ads or targeted ads that users can adopt to, where they're part of the sharing economy, where they get a part of the revenue, and build a better product that is out today in terms of search. And then Backpack is about creating a self-serve open source wallet that allows you to get distribution of the apps itself for users. So the DNAs are very different between the three.
I'm also very intrigued by the various consumer products, especially DeFi products, that have a lot of users, real product market fit, and launching their own wallets. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, there's a word about Opensea, Magic Eden, Uniswap that are all launching their own wallet.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, again, it's about bargaining power. Like the fact that users are happy to use the built-in swapping function in MetaMask and paying an extra like 50, 75 basis points tells me that they value the convenience more than anything else. And so all these different applications, Uniswap, Magic Eden, Opensea, they want that bargaining power. They don't want to be subject to the will of someone else, which is the browser extensions, the wallets, right? They want to go down the layer from an application to wallets to the wallet layer.
Do you think it's too late, or are we early?
I think in general it's never too late in crypto.
Yep.
I'm not sure if any product in crypto has really won it yet, given the fact that crypto so far has only reached like maybe like 5% of the world population.
If that, actually.
And obviously the counter argument is, despite how shitty the user experience has been with MetaMask, at least from a personal point of view, like because due to my failed transactions over and over again, I'm still surprised that no one has ever managed to supplant MetaMask as a wallet. Like there's so many wallet projects, wallet startups last year, but they're all fighting an uphill battle. What gives OpenSea, Magic Eden, Uniswap, and all the other like DeFi applications an edge is the fact that they already have a lot of users, and they can use that as a distribution for their new product, which is the wallet.
What's also interesting is, let's take Uniswap as an example. They acquired a company called Genie, which is now their de facto NFT swaps market. Let's like put the pieces together, right? So Uniswap, who's never really built anything on the NFT side, acquired Genie. They're building out their own mobile wallet experience, and they want to attract these users into downloading this wallet, where now they have these features, right? Exchange and NFTs. And you see OpenSea doing the same thing with its own NFT marketplace. And then you see Magic Eden doing the same thing. What does the world look like a year, 2 years from down the line? Do you think these wallets or apps are going to start to aggregate more experiences of other dApps into its own wallets? Yep. I think so. Because what they want to do is, once you own the customer's assets, it's very hard to go anywhere else, really. And you become the de facto winner.
Yeah. I mean, this is basically the crypto version of aggregation theory.
Exactly.
You aggregate all the apps, and you are the de facto consumer facing interface. So basically, in my mind, 2 years from now, the wallet war is going to be as dramatic and as epic as the layer one wars. In crypto, basically, there's two things that will matter in 2 years: the wars between the layer ones and the wars between the wallets. These two layers happen to be the ones that will capture the most value 2 to 5 years from now. Basically, the single most user-facing, consumer-facing layer, and the most programmable, the most general, the most low-level layer. So it's sort of at the two extremes of the same spectrum, the most high level and the most low level. And everyone in between will get squeezed by these two layers.
And I only see, at least on the wallet side, it could be true for anything else, but typically there's about 2 to 3 winners in the space. And I mean, I'm sure there could be many more depending on the verticals, and we could talk about the different verticals shortly. But this wallet war is going to be the war for major distribution of apps on crypto. is how I see it. I do think wallets are going to become verticalized to a certain degree, and they're going to offer features and products that are going to be very specific to that vertical. So one area also could be gaming.
Yep.
And so there's like two competitors there, Sequence and who was the other one? I think Stardust, which we can talk a bit about.
I've seen more in our applications, way more. There's a lot of wallets focusing on just gaming, and there's wallets focusing on DeFi. And the verticalization makes sense to me because the preferences of a gamer would be different from the preferences of a DeFi user, especially when it comes to security. Like when you play a game, you may not have that much money in your wallet, so you don't care that much about the security of your assets. What you care about is being able to click things very quick, not having to switch from one app to another, not having to wait 10 seconds for the transaction to settle, etc. So as a gamer, you probably value convenience over security more. And as a result, the wallet should be designed in a different way.
Yeah. So Sequence Wallet, as an example, is very simple to use. It's an OAuth login. So you log in with your Google account or your Facebook account. It'll automatically bind the private key with the OAuth, and you're automatically logged into your wallet. And it supports Unreal and Unity. So if you're a gaming developer that wants to build out a game, you could easily create like NFT token contracts. You're able to query databases, NFT or token NFT databases, and then allows people to trade, allows players to trade tokens with each other. So, and then batching transactions through relayers, kind of like a account abstraction. I think they're using account abstraction. I'm not sure, but this enables batching of transactions. So if you're playing a game, you don't want to see 100 different transactions that you have to approve just to play a game.
That's right.
You just want to click a button and play a game. And I think account abstraction does that. And we'll talk a bit more about account abstraction. So that's what I've seen with Sequence Wallet. And then Stardust does something very similar, but I don't think they have like relayers and like Unity support.
And in terms of verticalization, I mean, to me, a very closely related topic is localization, geographic localization.
Yeah.
Right. So there's going to be a wallet for every part of the world that looks more familiar, both from a culture and the language point of view to their users. So I think wallets are going to get really, really fragmented. I think wallets are going to be probably more fragmented than the layer one wars.
Yeah, I could see that. The question is like, how different is the apps going to be over time in terms of the products that they're offering, distribution, etc. But I could see your point. I was talking to the founder of Kyber and Dodo, and they were telling me that they have their UI UX is primarily supporting users in Asia and Southeast Asia. And so the way they explained it to me was, you know, we have a lot of widgets and buttons because people in that region prefer more buttons and widgets versus the people in the US where they like dumbed down UI UX.
Yeah. I have a theory. I have a theory for this, by the way, as to why this is the case.
Why?
I think most of the Asia has gone through decades of scarcity, and so they need to feel the abundance. Whereas most of the West has gone through decades of abundance, and that's why they prefer minimalism. And this is not just like applications, like web applications. It's also like home design and stuff like that. So it has to do with a little bit of recent history. But that's just my theory.
Got it.
The other day, Elon Musk actually was talking about turning Twitter into a super app similar to WeChat.
Yes.
Like Elon Musk is a big fan of WeChat and the whole super app thesis. And so I thought that was interesting because up until now, there's obviously a bifurcation in terms of the de facto consumer-facing application. Like in China, it's WeChat. In the West, there is none. It's extremely fragmented.
Yeah. Why is there no super app for US or North America, you think? So LATAM has it. So it'd be primarily, North America.
I mean, obviously, there's the reason for Asian users preferring a more cluttered, more aggregated user experience. In the West, or Western users preferring more minimalism. Potentially, there is some regulatory or government reasons behind it. I feel like the Chinese government probably wants that kind of super app rather than something more fragmented.
I also think it's probably because our reliance on credit cards versus in China specifically, where WeChat was a form of payment over
Uh-huh.
credit cards. I think credit cards did very minimal there, but we were heavily reliant on the credit card system.
Yeah.
And in China, they just use QR codes to make payments, right?
Yeah.
And that became the aggregated layer to build on top of, like other apps and services on top of the payment layer.
That is a very good point. So basically, because of the native payment system in WeChat, the native payment system is actually one of the reasons why you get basically a flourishing of everything else building on top of WeChat.
Yep.
It's what enabled all that ecosystem flourishing. And if you extrapolate that into crypto, you can probably foresee something similar where crypto is basically a native
Yep.
payment system and you get a bunch of other applications building on top of the payment. So in that sense, potentially crypto will go down the same path as WeChat when it comes to like the super app thesis and
Yep.
what enable all of this.
I think that's where we're going. It seems the way everything is going right now. And so this battle between, let's say, Magic Eden, Opensea, and all, I mean, there's over 250 different apps, wallets right now that are concurrently live right now.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think there's so many wallets that are competing for this space? I think it's because there's a shot at becoming the de facto super app for certain regions or certain verticals, which could give them immense power over time.
Yeah, absolutely. The other day, like a couple months ago, Santiago asked, or he launched a post on Twitter about like what would be the most contrarian thought or something like that in the next 2 years. I was the only person who mentioned that wallets will be as big as layer one words. I think that's going to happen. Like if wallets are going to launch tokens, which they
It's
could,
over. Yeah.
this is going to be so dramatic. All the attention are going to be on wallets and going from the layer ones into wallets.
Agreed. There's another group of wallets that are growing in users. There's in-app wallets, there's smart contract wallets, and there's wallets that leverage account abstraction. So I'll explain what all of those are, and then maybe we could talk about some of the wallets, and then dive deeper into the design choices of wallets, how they want to custody and create that UI UX experience that they're looking for. UA accounts are pretty basic. They're called external owned account, and that pretty much gives the private key management, the public private key management to the user. And they use wallets as a way to interact with the dApps that they want to, but ultimately the user is in charge of the private key. Mm-hmm. There's good things and bad things about that, which is obvious. Smart contract accounts or contract accounts, they split the user from the assets and signing of the assets. So you could think of it this way. The smart contract would hold the assets and the user can be another wallet that's sitting outside of the smart contract account, and it can create different types of logic for that smart contract wallet account, and it could trigger that by triggering any sort of function that they want. So that's essentially what Argent is, and we'll talk a bit more about what Argent is. And then there's accounts that use account abstraction, or wallets that use account abstraction, which is recently proposed by Vitalik. It's dubbed EIP 4337. And ultimately, it's exactly that, where you decouple the object holdings tokens account from the person that's authorized to move these tokens. And then over time, you could create ways to delegate experiences to dApps. So an example of this is those dApps that leverage account abstraction could pay for the user's gas fees or could bundle transactions in the background, make it seamless so that users don't see all of the broken UI UX experiences that they see today, as an example, which I think is a huge 10x improvement from the experiences that we went through previously. Mm-hmm. So there are a couple startups that are working on this that's leveraging account abstraction. There's 0xPass, there's Biconomy, and a couple others. And their whole goal is to allow dApps to control the UI UX experiences in such a way where instead of me having to go on Aave today to deposit my assets and approve my assets and then submit my assets, then withdraw my assets, every function that I call, there is a transaction that pops up where I have to approve it.
Mm-hmm.
That creates a really bad UI UX experiences. And so what would a world look like if I could just push a button and I automatically deposit, withdraw my assets?
Mm-hmm.
That's the world we want to go to next. And account abstraction enables that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess like one is, what are your thoughts on account abstraction and startups that are working on this?
I mean, obviously, it's a big deal. I don't want to be playing a game and upon every interaction on chain, I have to sign a transaction. It's just an impossible user experience for me. And I also don't want to delegate all the signing of the transactions to this one centralized entity, which is the game developer. I prefer slightly more trustless assumptions. So I want to let the smart contracts do this for me rather than either myself doing it or the game developer doing it as in a centralized fashion. It seems to me like a pretty big deal in terms of user experience.
It is. And we're starting to see like a whole host of wallets that have launched just to target account abstraction.
Yep.
In fact, I believe the Ethereum Foundation is making it, would like to make this mandatory for everyone to use. I saw that and I thought that was very interesting. And so we're starting to see like, developer friendly wallets. So I mentioned a couple like 0x Pass and others, but there are others that have been in the space for a while, like Magic Labs is one, and Web3 Auth. And so Magic Labs and Web3 Auth are pretty similar in that they offer developers a way to allow users to log in using like OAuth, like Google or Facebook, and it binds the private key with the user login. And so every time they log in, it automatically detects the private key and then enables the public key and being able to manage it. So those are just like very developer friendly tools that I'm starting to see that developers enable.
And by the way, like earlier we said, like we wonder why we think that it's still very early for everyone and no one has really won it yet. And one of the reasons is just that, there's all these new standards like EIP, what is it, 43 something?
4337.
4337 and count abstraction. There's always these new low-level changes, new innovations that puts everyone, in this particular case, all the wallet projects on equal footing. And so the game basically restarts every time something like this happens. Like something that enables fundamentally new user experiences like this happens at a low level. It puts everyone, all the startups, on equal footing, resets the whole game.
So a couple of thoughts on that. One was I was doing some research and I came across a tweet in 2017 that talked about the future of the future products. And it talked about the future of lending is Dharma. The future of credit is Bloom. Do you remember any of these names?
Bloom, yes. I mean, Dharma, obviously, but Bloom rings a bell.
Credit scoring.
Yeah.
The future of wallets is Balancer or Balance. And all of these apps are no longer here, right?
Yeah.
And it goes back to what you're saying, which is I still think we're still in the experimental research phase of crypto. And I don't think anyone has won the war on anything yet because there's just so much that still hasn't been researched or found yet. And finally, which I still think this is a really big issue, and I don't know if people are taking this seriously or not, but how do you feel about your private key being binded with your OAuth like Google or Facebook?
What do you mean by that?
You've created a Kepler account, right? I'm just going to give you something that you've used recently.
Yeah.
So if you use Kepler, it asks you to log in with your Google account.
It did? I don't remember that, but
well, at least I think I use that feature. I don't know if you have.
Okay.
And so what it does is it creates a private public key and it binds it with your OAuth login.
What does binds it mean?
Binds it means that it will associate the private key with your user login.
Mm-hmm.
So every time I log in with my Google account, as an example, it will authenticate your private key, your private public key, and then it'll open up that wallet that's associated with your Google account.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about decentralized identity, right? Metamask founders in some of his podcasts talked a lot about decentralized identity and why he thinks it's important for crypto. If we're taking away, like we obviously want convenience and 10x UI UX support, but we're still relying on Web 2 Rails. And now Google has even more power over users because now they have the wallet that is binded with your Google login. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the question is this harmful for us? Or is it fine because it's just going to bring on a whole lot of people into crypto today? I personally think it's an issue. And we should be separating our identities from Google and Facebook and our private keys separately. But some people find it is fine with it because they can bring on more users into crypto.
Mm-hmm. I mean, ultimately, I think users are going to learn different ways to custody their assets and interact with the chain, right? So like using the Web2 credentials to log in and create a wallet is like going to primary school, right? And then after that, you graduate, you get to high school, and then what do you do there? Well, you use something that's more safer, like you install a Metamask account and write down your seed phrase, right? And after that, you go to college, and then you do something even more advanced, which is you buy a hardware wallet and you connect to the blockchain and interact with the blockchain from your hardware wallet. And eventually you can do even more sophisticated by generating fully cold wallets, paper wallets, and disconnected from the internet, that kind of stuff. So I don't think every user will go through this journey, but some of them that do, and especially some of them that go through crises like FTX, they will learn this stuff. They will care more and more about security. Basically, I think there's always going to be a trade-off between convenience and security. Mm-hmm. And people are going to graduate or gradually gravitate from convenience into security.
I don't know if I buy that because I feel like people they don't care about privacy. People don't care about privacy. They don't care about anything. They just care about how easy it is to use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they won't care until they lose all their net worth on FTX. Like stuff like this will continue to happen every few years.
Yeah, but what if it never happens, right? And in firms like Google and Facebook get more and more power over users that are now using Google as a way to authenticate in Web3. I feel like that could be an issue in the long run, right? So we talked about EUA, contract accounts, account abstraction. There are a couple other ways wallets can design different design choices for custody. There's multi-party computation, which we talked a lot about. Coinbase Wallet does this, and I think Web3 Auth does this, which I think personally, if there's a spectrum of like managing your own private keys and like hardware wallets versus like hot wallets, I feel like the truth is somewhere in the middle. It could be multi-party computation. A multi-party computation is essentially allows two or more parties to jointly compute a function output without revealing their inputs. So it comes to the same output, and then they can authenticate the transaction. This is interesting because technically you could allow, you could give one of the keys to Coinbase as an example, and you could have one of the keys, and then you can have the same output and then submit a transaction that could get approved. So let's say that you as a user end up losing your key, or you get hacked or whatever. The hacker can still not infiltrate your wallet because Coinbase has the other share.
Yep.
And I think this is great because you can still interact in the dApp world. Like in terms of security, there's very low security risks compared to like a hot wallet or a hardware wallet where somebody comes and steals your wallet. So I think MPCs are really cool, and I'm pretty bullish on that tech.
And if the user loses their shard or their part of the key, they can recover it by using a third-party KSM, right? So for example,
that's right.
You can recover using a shard that's stored on KSM and then using the shard that Coinbase holds, and you can regenerate the original seed, even if you no longer have access to the shard that was stored on your local device that you lost.
That's right. There's another one called Shamir Secret, which allows you to replace your private key with several shares of this key. And Trezor One uses this. So instead of having to store your private key, you could, for example, create like 3 shares, right? One goes to Trezor, one goes to you, and one you can give to your friend. Or you could give 3 of them to one you hold and the other 2 to your friends. And then you'll need authenticate all 3 shares to get your original private key that would allow you to do whatever you want. This is not really used as much these days, but Trezor still uses it, so I wanted to call it out. Mm-hmm. And then the final one, which I thought is the newest one that recently came out by a company called Lit Protocol. It's very different, but it essentially allows you to generate public-private keys through the Lit network, so it splits the keys up. the private key, and it's stored on the nodes of the lit network. And you as a user get an NFT that represents all the shares of the private keys that are split between the different nodes. So an example of this is that now that you have this, you could send money to this NFT, right? And this NFT is like a tradable wallet, as an example, if I'm explaining this correctly. And you can decrypt the keys between all the nodes by holding the NFT. I just thought that was very interesting. I haven't heard about something as unique as this, and just wanted to call it out because I think this was recently launched like a couple months ago. So those are like the different design choices that I've seen for wallets that I've seen deployed. So I'm really excited about some of the new ones that are going to come out, or the ones that are using some level of account abstraction or multi-party computation, which are the two that I'm most bullish on.
Cool. Any predictions for the coming years?
It's hard to say, but a couple things. One is Super Wallet is going to be obviously a very big thing. Mm-hmm. I think verticalization is going to happen. 3 is I think wallets are going to show their strength to the dApps that are using them. Mm-hmm. I don't think we've seen this yet, but we will. And we've seen some level of this with MetaMask offering MetaMask swaps, mm-hmm. right? And it's probably the result of why Uniswap is launching its own wallet, because it realized that if all the order flow could go from Uniswap to MetaMask, and MetaMask can direct their order flow to 0x or wherever, then it starts to lose share. And if we're going to live in a mobile first world, which obviously we are, then that's a big issue, I think, in my opinion. And because mm-hmm. Uniswap doesn't have a mobile first, I mean, it does have like a mobile app or web app, but I don't think a lot of people use it. I think everyone still predominantly use crypto on desktops. And that's how mm-hmm. early we are in the space.
The mobile experience is total crap. I've tried every single one of the mobile wallets, every single one of the top 10. Unusable, completely unusable.
So let's go back to like 2009 and 10, when Facebook went public. They were primarily only a web app. And their shares went down like 25% because of IPO, because they missed mobile. They quickly got into mobile and they got billions of users using the app, right? The Facebook app, WhatsApp, and all of that. Or they acquired WhatsApp, but they ended up like really taking advantage of mobile. And I think it's also true today is we're very similar in the nature where we have web apps that work decent. But if we really want to get like 100x users into crypto, we need to go mobile first. We need to solve private key management, and we need to create an experience that is very simple for people to use today. And we're not there yet.
I mean, part of that is also the fact that the first wave of applications, decentralized applications that really have reached product market fit are financial applications. And financial users tend to be serious users, prosumers, sophisticated users. And their workflow tends to be complex. And so they would naturally gravitate towards desktop for the complex workflow. But for the next wave of applications, namely gaming and social, most of that will happen on mobile.
Yeah.
Right? Because gaming, a lot of gaming will be casual mobile games. You don't stay on your laptop and talk to your friends or your family. You do that sitting in the bathroom and using your mobile phone, right?
Yep. So any predictions from you, Qiao?
Super wallets, this is, of course, I think not only are we going to see more financial applications built into the wallets, but also social and gaming. Especially, there could be one or two de facto social, like Web3 social platforms, and they will be built into the wallets, and the wallets are going to have a lot of power against them. Gaming, it's a little bit less clear because games are more fragmented. I can see the wallets integrate with the most commonly used applications, and for the ones that are fragmented and the long tail, I'm not sure if they're going to integrate them directly into the homepage of their wallet. So gaming might be slightly different. Obviously, account abstraction is a big deal. We're going to see much better user experiences interacting with complex smart contracts, not having to sign every single transaction, bundling all the transactions, etc. Mobile wallets, of course. Oh, multi-chain wallets. I just can't see myself using 6 different browser extensions to access 6 different chains. It's going to be a one wallet that will allow the user to seamlessly interact many different chains. And potentially not even having to store assets on the different chains. Just store asset on Ethereum, but bridging natively in the wallet and access the other applications on the other chains.
Yeah, multi-chain for sure. And I think like what Brave Wallet's doing is very interesting from that lens, right? Auto-generate every wallet for every layer one and automatically tie it to your identity. So I think that's the future.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think we're at time in regards to our topic on wallets. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, always reach out to us. Otherwise, hit subscribe and we'll catch you guys soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Thanks for listening to Good Game. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next week.